Not good.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the eCarrierCheck show, and a happy new year. Hoping that everyone has their 2023 goals planned. We're excited to bring a kind of a different twist today. We're going to talk about eCarrierCheck and the load boards, and we'll discuss some things between the both of them. I had the opportunity to speak with a dispatcher and freight brokers, just kind of talking about how they use the load board, some of the struggles that they work throughout the day. And then essentially I want to see how eCarrierCheck can maybe solve some of those issues and help those of you that are going through some of those problems that when I was talking to those dispatchers and brokers. So I'm excited to talk about today and maybe compare the both and see how they can go hand in hand together.
Yeah. So, I love this. This is an interesting topic because we get this question constantly asked, right? Well, is this a load board? Or how does this compare to a load board? And so we're going to break it down today. And honestly, I, as a freight broker, when I was a freight broker, I used them both. I used eCarrierCheck. I had the opportunity to use several different load boards out there. There's some real popular ones out there, like DAT and TruckStop 123. There's some up and coming ones that are coming up that are pretty decent. But, here's the major difference. And then we're going to get into some of those nuts and bolts that you talked with dispatchers and brokers in. Here's the major difference, okay? If I'm a load board and I'm a freight broker and I need a truck right now, right? Most likely the load board potentially could give you a truck quicker than eCarrierCheck.
Right.
Okay? It's a bigger net. They're more popular. Not everybody is on eCarrierCheck.
Yeah.
They will be at some point, hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
But if you're willing to grind, I tell you what, I used it myself, is I would get loads from, say, Chicago down to St. Louis. I got them all the time.
Yeah.
And I can honestly say that there were days where I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to my relationships first that I've built off eCarrierCheck. I call these people. I knew they run their lanes because we have an ability to look at carriers that run certain lanes, right? But if you're willing to grind and make 10 phone calls, somebody's going to take that load.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that if you're living and dying, in my personal opinion, your business plan should be load boards should be last resort, right?
Yeah.
I think that you should be, if you're a carrier, in my opinion, you should be calling your direct shippers first, right? And not a lot of carriers have direct shippers.
Right.
They should be calling their direct broker relationship second, and then the load boards. Now I'm talking from a carrier standpoint.
Yep. That
same thing would be true for brokers. They should be calling their carriers that they have under contract first, then comb ECC to find maybe somebody right, and then last but certainly not least, there's a load board. In my mind, our tech stacks should run together.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with load boards. It's just a reactive way to manage your business. I think you should be more proactive so you're not chasing all the time. How often do we hear that?
Oh, constantly. And then you mentioned about, when you post up a load and no one calls, sometimes those lanes, maybe no one calls. And that's what's nice with eCarrierCheck is we'll start calling those brokers that we have seen running those lanes, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
So when no one calls on a load, what do you do, right?
Yeah.
You go on Facebook, LinkedIn, or let's start calling some carriers up today and grow that relationship.
Speaking of Facebook, honestly, I've seen some crazy sort of load board-esque sort of things on like Reddit, on Facebook groups. There's a power only group that a buddy of mine runs. And a lot of people book loads that way.
Yeah.
And so the power of social media is real.
Yeah.
And maybe that's even the fourth most popular load board.
I agree.
It's going to be Reddit and Facebook and Insta. I've seen some crazy stuff just posted, and they need some help. Even LinkedIn, I've seen people moving freight on LinkedIn. So I definitely think there's some interesting, ways of moving freight these days. We are just, a sourcing platform that helps all carriers, dispatchers, and brokers identify the people that can help them as long as you're willing to do the work.
Correct. Yeah.
You got to pick up the phone.
Yeah.
You have to pick up the phone with our site in order to be successful.
Definitely. And it's worth it too. I mean, I had a guy signed up last week on Friday, and we talked yesterday, we touched base, and they had 3 leads. And I was kind of, talking about their process. Well, They made 50 calls, and there's three brokers together. They made 50 calls each from Friday till yesterday, 3 leads. And, essentially what they're going to do now is follow up next year, because obviously between now and New Year's, there's kind of everyone's shutting down. But it's possible. I mean, are you going to make some calls? Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Yeah, it is. Sure. I think you can control your own future by picking this up, right? So let's break it down real quick on things that you heard from that carrier first. I know he dispatches 5 guys. I think something that I thought was probably the most interesting thing about this conversation is that I would consider him kind of a partially active load board user.
Yeah.
He doesn't post his truck. He doesn't want to hear from brokers. He wants to see some loads, look at it, think through the situation, look for loads on the other end and see if I take this load, it looks like he's paying, $2,000 on this load. What's on the other end? Right. Is there something that he can take it? And he doesn't feel as high pressured of a situation with being on the phone. Not everybody's good on the phone.
Right.
Not everyone wants the pressure from the phone. They want to think through things. So he's like this, he's kind of this partial user of the load boards where he doesn't post his trucks, but he wants to be able to think through what's A, B, and C look like.
Right. And not to date him, because I love him. But he also threw out that load boards can be confusing.
Yeah.
And I said, did you get any kind of proper training? He kind of said a little bit, they called him, maybe showed him how to use it, or there's some manual on there, but still essentially it's kind of confusing if you've never seen a load board and you hop on, you're like, what do you do?
Yeah. I tell you what, there's some simple load boards. And then there's load boards that have a lot of bells and whistles. And sometimes those extra bells and whistles can add confusion.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's like wearing your first pair of cargo pants at some point. Frustrations with the load boards.
The biggest one is notes. So he was kind of showing me some of the loads he was looking into, and there were some hay loads that they weren't very descriptive, and that kind of turned him away. So I feel like sometimes we forget to put notes in or add a little more information. So that's some of the things that he felt was pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
But what's nice from him is, from both points of a broker and dispatcher that I talked to, was building relationships. And those relationships really relay him the correct information. They're giving him more than he needs to know, but it's good to know that.
Yeah. He even mentioned to me the other day when I was talking to him that if he sees something that's posted on the load board with a brokerage that he's worked with in the past, he will call the broker he worked with in the past because he feels more comfortable calling them. He doesn't even look at, kind of an interesting way to use it, but he doesn't like to necessarily, I don't know, he's an introverted kind of guy. He's very engineer mindset sort of thing, but he wants to work with people because of relationships. So he's using that load board as the last result. You could tell the other thing that I thought was really interesting was he just always got pissed off that freight brokers would leave their freight up.
Yes. Yeah. He was not very happy about that.
No. And I'm going to guess that right there has cost America's trucking millions of hours of inefficient time calling a broker and saying, hey, I want to ask you about this load from Chicago to St. Louis. Oh, I forgot to pull it down.
Yeah.
I mean, woo. I mean, there's some things right there with the load board that you may not get if you're using eCarrierCheck to build those relationships.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So
to each their own. We have multiple. I've had multiple dispatchers this week come out to me and say, I'm building relationships with all these brokers, and they're working their way off of load boards. They want brokers to consistently to send them loads every day. But that's what they wanted to do, and I said, that's awesome. Let's keep building relationships with brokers then.
Yeah. So what else did you get from the carrier from him? What was there any other like kind of meaty things that he mentioned that you want to bring up, or is that good for the carrier?
I feel like eCarrierCheck from his point of view it was nice to have eCarrierCheck in his corner because it can almost help you build your routes. Because it's always important to understand where that truck's going, and what are you going to get once you get to that destination. So
Right.
that's one of the few things that I really remembered, and I enjoyed that because I hear consistently carriers saying, I don't want to go to that area. There's not a lot of freight.
Right.
So it's like, okay, well, let's hop on eCarrierCheck. Let's start building a route, maybe a bow tie like Shaggy likes to do, or whatever it is. But
Yeah,
I love that.
I also think, carriers mention all the time to us, we're obviously dealing with smaller carriers.
Mm-hmm.
They have 1, 2, 5 trucks somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And they're like, I can't get a direct shipper. Nobody wants to work with me.
Right.
And I think that's true at a really large mega level.
Yeah.
To call Amazon, to call Walmart, to call all these mega companies, I don't know if they're going to take the time to get set up with you. Maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Right.
But finding those smaller shippers, as a 1 or 2 or 3 truck operation, that's very doable.
Yeah.
And you can really start to take advantage of what we would call kind of that 3-step rule is go to your direct shippers first, go to your direct brokers second, and then go to the load boards after that. And when you're building your route,
probably have a lot to add to
Yeah.
this as well. I actually spoke with Justin, who we've interviewed before. Great feedback. One of the things that he came up, he was not hesitant to say this, but was double brokering. People calling in on his loads, trying to double broker, and trying to how to decipher that. How do people decipher it's a double broker or not?
Yeah. This one's kind of interesting. And I had the opportunity to work in that brokerage last week for a few hours. And I want to say that they posted up 12 loads while I was there. A lot more went on relationship carriers. And of all 12 of those loads, I think 9 of the 12 actually ended up being a double broker to start.
Wow.
Immediately.
Yeah.
Now, here's the fail safe. Not every time, but a lot of the times, is that when you're doing your due diligence on a carrier and if they don't have any inspections, that's going to be a flag. Okay, yeah. That's going to be your first flag that you should be aware of. Right? They should be, honestly, if you have 5 trucks and you don't have any inspections in a year's time, that's an issue.
Yeah.
Right. eCarrierCheck's actually putting in a vetting process for this on their next update. I'm super excited about it because it relates, hey, who's this company related to? Is the owner of this company? Have they shut down another company? Where are they all at? There's a lot of kind of some real meat and potatoes coming up. But back to Justin, double brokers were calling 9 out of 12 loads on both the major sites. They work on 2 of the major sites, and that's all they got for the first 3-4 calls.
And what's nice is back to kind of what you're mentioning too, as well, how we flag that. Justin's quick to get on eCarrierCheck, search that carrier, see how many trucks they have, inspections, all that good stuff. So he has that baby up constantly throughout the day. What I've noticed when I'm able to watch him work.
Yeah, and you should just use it as a part of your day to day. You've got your TMS up, you got eCarrierCheck up. It should be just the first thing. Honestly, I do the same thing every day. I walk into the office, I bring up eCarrierCheck, I bring up LinkedIn, I bring up some accounting stuff. And then I work through that all day. Yeah. I'm right there on it, and I'm able to help. So, that now, besides those people that weren't double brokers, here were some of the other issues that Justin talked about that I thought was really interesting. Is that people are going so fast these days. They don't slow down, and I'm not talking physically here with trucks. I'm just talking about they've got a lot on their plate.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to book trucks or loads for all their trucks. They're busy. They're doing paperwork. There's a lot going on. They see a load posted on the load boards. They don't take time to read the dimensions, read the weight, read the notes. You could tell. I mean, when you talk to Justin, they're just moving. They're not intentionally going, I don't think that load's going to work. Right. They're just going, oh, this guy's got a load from A to B. I got to call him. Right. And so I think reading those notes, you don't see a lot of people. This isn't for everybody, but these are just things that happen when you're using a load board versus eCarrierCheck.
Right, and that's where Justin, because I know he has lots of relationships with carriers, where he can call these carriers up and say, "Hey, you guys are available, for next week to do this load." And then obviously, if he doesn't have any luck from his relationships, he does go to the broker or to the load boards. But essentially, he can get away from the carriers that maybe misread or something,
Yeah.
and just call my relationship carriers.
Yeah,
that's what he does.
The other thing that I think is really entertaining about something we got from the carrier and then we get from the broker, right? Well, the carriers don't pull down their trucks.
Yeah.
And then the carriers are like, well, the brokers don't pull down their loads.
It was interesting to hear both sides.
Yeah, you hear it from both sides. There almost should be like a timer where it removes your load after maybe like 2 hours or something crazy on the load boards. But again, we're comparing ECC to the load boards. When a freight broker is calling carriers, they have all the information. They're able to give it to that carrier. It's a relationship. It's more a proactive approach than a reactive approach, because you're really just kind of running and gunning. And, in my opinion, freight brokers should watch and monitor how much of their loads are going on the load board versus relationships. And same with carriers. They should monitor how many loads are taking from load boards versus direct, either shippers or direct brokers.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? Because you have to make sure that, either end of it, that you're not putting too much risk in this pool. Right. So I think that's really important that you take the time to measure where you get your loads from, how you get your loads, and then even like when you think about it, how inefficient. You should just make a strike every time the carrier doesn't call in they don't understand what it is, or maybe they didn't take the load down, or the carrier didn't take his truck down, whatever it may be. But you should always be watching your efficiencies, because the only thing that we have is time. You've got to be the most efficient during your day. And where does that time come in? Now, if you're grinding and calling trucks all day on eCarrierCheck, right? It's time, right? So there's other ways on our platform that you can build relationships. And I'll give you some examples there. Is, yes, you can call people. You can utilize our mail system. Something that I've seen that has been more successful is when people actually make a list on our site, copy all of those emails that we give you off their site, and then they send it out from their email address.
Right. Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
We're all dealing with spam.
Oh yeah.
Holy cow! I can't even talk to my mom. Her spam goes into my email, and I'm like, okay, Mom, I just text me. It's probably easier. But then she's 70-some, and that doesn't work. But you see where I'm going with that.
Oh yeah.
So I think that the nice asset, being able to communicate in other ways is convenient with eCarrierCheck. With the load boards, they're sort of limited with their communication functionality. Some of them will list their emails, a lot won't. Some of them you have to call and identify a load number and say, hey, I'm calling on load 108-554, and then they'll give you some information. Right. So a lot of good things about both. It just depends on how you want to run your business.
Right. Yeah, 100% agree. Let's move on to this next topic here, bid boards. That was kind of one of the things that Justin brought up with me was bid boards. He said that he's been on a few since he's been a broker, and there's boards where they have timers and they'll let you know, hey, this load's been covered. Or there's other boards out there that essentially just keep running and they don't really tell you if you got the load or not. So that was kind of a little bit of his frustration, not huge, but you wish that sometimes bid boards could be, relevantly, the same.
Yeah.
Have that timer. Let me know if I got the load or not, so
That's
I can
fair.
move on.
There's a couple different bid boards I want to talk about for a second. If you're a carrier and you're getting on the broker's bid boards, okay? For instance, if you sign up for C.H. Robinson's bid board, right? Man, do they have a weird amount of freight. I know people that just make a living on this board, right? It's a clean board. There's a lot of freight. They pay quick in some cases. If you kind of make sure you have the proper paperwork in place and do those things.
Right.
But, there's a monster bid board, right? And that's for carriers.
Yeah.
Some of the rates may be less than what carriers want to do. So that's something you have to take into consideration, right? Most brokers, big brokers, have a bid board, right? So if you're a carrier and you're interested in signing up, this is a good place to go find freight. The only challenge is not everybody has freight in the areas that you want. So that's why sign up with maybe the 3 big brokers and then maybe the load boards, and away you go, right? As far as what Justin's talking about and the bid boards, he's a freight broker. He's on probably a shipper's bid board that they got, right? I've been on 2 different bid boards, and I've had success on both, where one's timer based and one is just kind of, okay, lowest price after 3 bids wins, right? And I've seen both ways, and I've seen where 3 bids took 48 hours. So there's some things to worry about with the one that you're waiting to see if you want it. First and foremost, do you still have capacity? Did you bid it with somebody that was in the area that day, right? Or do you have a local relationship that's actually going to move that freight?
And what's crazy too is because if a shipper has a load board or a bid board, I should say, their process could be different. Maybe they go with the first guy, or maybe they wait a little bit and get the best rate. So I feel like every shipper is really different. And I noticed sometimes too, from what I heard from the brokers I talked with, is that shippers will like send out mass emails with the loads or something like that, along those lines, and then those brokers then have the duty to call carriers, but hey, can you give me a rate on this? Are you in the area?
Yeah.
So I've noticed that each shipper is obviously different.
Yeah.
So make sure to ask those questions when you do talk with the shippers.
Yeah, because you do find that some shippers have they blast out emails to everybody. That's their bid board.
Yeah.
There's probably some efficiencies and inefficiencies with that. I think the timed bid board is probably my favorite personally, because what's going to come at the time allocated. If this bid ends in 60 minutes, in 61 minutes, I know if I need to cover it or not. Right. Where the other ones, like I said earlier, I pull up eCarrierCheck, I pull up, LinkedIn, and then maybe I pull up these 2 bid boards as a freight broker, and you're able to get on there and bid on freight all day and try to get some wins.
I'll tell you what, from the time that we spent with that brokerage here, that's local, they called some shippers from eCarrierCheck, and those shippers said, hey, you call it the great time. We're needing some help.
Yeah.
So, timing's everything, like you mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
So if you want to try to stay away from all those bid boards, maybe you're not comfortable with them yet, get on eCarrierCheck. Let's help you find some shippers that need you today.
Yeah.
Let's start picking up the phone and making some calls.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that's what it all comes down to. And when you're a freight broker in a carrier, whatever it is, pick up the phone and have a quick conversation. And here's my only advice with this is, the easier it is to get set up with that shipper, the more likely it is that they have a lot of competition. Right? If I pick up this phone and the guy's like, yeah, I'll sign you up today, and he's blasting it out to 20 brokers and 50 carriers. Is there money to be made? Sure.
Yeah.
Is it the most ideal client? It wasn't for me. Okay.
Right.
I would rather have kind of fought to get on a shipper's list, that I start to build relationship. He sends out 3 or 4 loads to me and maybe a couple other people, and then I can have, some luck. So I'm a big fan of those boutique shippers, the guys that are shipping out 10 loads a week, not 100 for me. Right. But, definitely the bid board versus load board versus those things all there. It was good to break this down though, because eCarrierCheck honestly is one of the better sourcing platforms. This new update that you and I have been beta testing will be insane. There's a lot of new features on there that'll help people grow their businesses, and I'm super jacked about that.
Me too.
As well. So close this out, Nate. I've enjoyed the show today.
Yeah. Honestly, just with the new year, going to be here, write down your goals here, and let's conquer them. Let eCarrierCheck help you. Need any guidance, or we got lots of connections. So please reach out to us. Schedule a demo with us, and let's see how you can start sourcing some leads and growing relationships. So I really appreciate, we really appreciate everyone's support in this community. We're just thankful for everyone. So we appreciate you. Sign up for a demo, give us a call, let's chat, and best of luck to you.
Yeah. Thanks guys.
Thank
Happy
you.
New Year.